See, it's no in between. You're either free or you're a slave. There's no such thing as second-class citizenship. But a lot of you running around talking about you Democrats, and the Democrats got you in the biggest trick going. When black people become serious about the revolutionary struggle that they are caught up in, whether they recognize it or not, when they begin to go down and knock off people who are oppressing them, that's when the revolutionary struggle unfolds.
I was 17.
Oh, okay.
When we started the Seattle chapter, we were the first.
Oh, that's 68.
68, yeah, we were the first chapter outside of California.
Okay.
Yeah.
They keep misusing y'all's picture. It's y'all that they keep using and saying it's Oakland. I've been telling everybody that's Seattle. That's not California.
Yeah, that who was that? Chappelle.
Yeah.
When he first came out of the pandemic, his very first show, he showed that image.
Yeah.
And he said, "These are the California Panthers." No, brother. That's us up here in Seattle.
Wow. Wow.
The brother that came over, Paul. Yeah. His sister, Pat. She was young and pregnant. Her mother was Millie Russell, who was a very prominent leader in the healthcare community out at the University of Washington Hospital, and recruiting black students in to get into the sciences so they could become doctors or whatever. And so Millie was very popular in the community. So Millie and I were very tight. And so Millie calls me up and tells me that Pat was in trouble. And so this boyfriend of hers was beating her. And so I told Millie, I said, "Don't worry about it, we'll take care of it." So me and one of my lieutenants, Ron, we called Pat up, told her we're coming over, and so she was pregnant at the time, and this boyfriend was beating her. So we came, and we never pulled any weapons, but we had our weapons under our coat, and we just sat there and wait for the dude, and the dude came, and we already had a reputation, for brothers that's beating sisters, because we rescued a lot of on their because they wanted to, prostitutes off of the block. They would come out, prostitutes would tell us, "We don't want to be pimp anymore." We said, "Well, come tell your pimp you're done, and if they got anything to say about it, come see us." So this is the word was already out in the community. We weren't trying to interfere with their business, but we weren't. If the sister wanted to get off the street, then they were going to have to let her go. So we got over to the house, and Pat tells the story in our documentary. It's in the book. So we just got there and just showed up, just were there. And the dude came, he saw me sitting there, and he never came back. And Pat credits us with saving her life. He never came back. Yeah, and that's her brother.
Okay.
Yeah, they just lost one of their other brothers a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, so they're a pretty prominent family in the community in Seattle. Pat and her mother Millie, Dr. Millie Russell.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know growing up that that was one of the strongest points of the Panther Party because they were community. I remember when there would be a beef in the community, and the people that had the problem would come to the Panthers and ask them to mediate.
Right.
They were the judge and jury. Right. That was the kind of trust that the community had in them.
Yeah.
And it was just a powerful time. And as a young brother watching this, a lot of who I've become comes out of that type of thing. Because my teacher, that I give credit for all that I've done, because my background is education.
Okay.
I taught in the New York City Board of Ed.
Right on.
For 31 years. In South Central Bronx.
Okay.
And a lot of what I give credit to in terms of my approach towards education, particularly our children, comes from the Panther Saturday meetings and sometimes during the week, but also from John Henry Clark. You know, and just trying to shape what it is for our community. And I still do it. That's why I'm here now. You know, because the sister Sadiqua and also sister Katrina brought me in to do some workshops this weekend on education.
Okay, right on.
You know,
right on.
Because that's really what I've done. You know, that's what I've dedicated my life to. And when I was going to the meetings, I wasn't planning on becoming a teacher. I want to be an astronaut.
Okay.
You know, but things just happened that it just turned you around.
That's right.
You know, and my name before Kaba was Booker T. Coleman.
Okay.
So when Dr. Clark first met me, he said, "You're gonna be a teacher one day."
Okay. Right on.
But I want to be an astronaut.
Challenges when we first opened the chapter was that people would want to come to us as kind of their personal, like, security force. And of course, that's not what we were about. And so Chairman Bobby kept saying, you can't answer every request. Now you have to tell people no. And there was this woman that kept calling the office because she said her son and other black kids were getting assaulted at Rainier Beach High School, and that the principal wasn't doing anything. And Aaron tells this story. He said the woman kept calling until she was crying over the phone. And Aaron said, okay, forget it. So he took a group of Panthers out there to Rainier Beach High School with weapons. And they went into the school, and the principal saw him and started running down the hallway. And he sent two comrades to go after him and get him and bring him back up. And he told the principal that if he didn't take care of it, you know, and stop the kids from getting beaten up, that we would be out there. And so it all stopped right then and there. But they're about to rebuild Rainier Beach. I don't know if you guys heard about that. And so I got a call from one of the sisters out there who asked if I would serve on the planning committee. But I don't have time to, but I can, you know, give them some input, because that area was in the southeast Seattle we had a lot of impact in that area for years, because we had a breakfast program a few blocks away up in Holly Park. There was one of our 5 breakfast programs, and that was well into the 70s, late 70s. And so the kids, you know, we had, you know, we'd get 200-300 kids every morning, and most of them would leave in time to go to school. But some of the stragglers that came in, we would give them rides to school to drop them off at South Shore Elementary, which is just blocks from Rainier Beach High School. So we had a lot of impact in that area for a long time, just because of the programs that we had organized in the various housing projects around the city. So we had 5 programs, breakfast programs. 4 of them were in housing projects, and 1 of them was at the Atlantic Street Center. And they ran all the way into the late 70s. Yeah.
Those are active days. You know. I just remember because your chapter, in terms of being birthed in spring or April of '68.
April of '68, shortly after Little Bobby's murder. In fact, Little Bob, the anniversary of Little Bobby's murder is coming up on the 6th. Just 4 more days. Yeah.
Wow. So this is a good time for even us to sit down and have the fellowship, man.
Absolutely.
Perfect time. Yeah.
Perfect timing. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it was. You know, it was. In fact, days before MLK was assassinated, we had, and then we were not members of the party. I was in high school, and we had formed the first high school black student union on the west coast of the United States, and our sister high school, Franklin, had called us up because they were having issues there with black and white kids. When they got in a fight, the black kids would get expelled, the white kids would get sent back to class. And a sister came to, as the story is told, a sister came to school with an afro, and she was sent to the principal's office, and the vice principal told her she had to go home and she could come back when she had an appropriate hairdo. And so they called us up, you know, and said, we got to do something. So Aaron was at the UW with Larry Gossett and a couple others, and me and a couple of brothers came from Garfield, and we met at Franklin, and we talked to the brothers, and they said that, and the sisters, it was brothers and sisters, they said that they wanted the Black Studies program, they wanted a BSU, so we said, okay, well, let's do it. We marched right across the street, went up into the principal's office and kicked him out, kicked the vice principal out, kicked the counselors out, and took over the school. And we stayed there overnight. Thank you. And the next day, the phone rang, and it was the principal pleading with us to leave, saying that they could have their BSU and that they could have a Black Studies program, and they would address all their needs. So we left. And it was about a week later, I was in my geometry class, and the phone rang, and Mr. Nairmore, my teacher, said that they wanted me in the office. I said, okay, again, what did I do this time? I stepped out of the office, and 2 detectives arrested me and took me to juvie. Aaron and Larry, unbeknownst to me at the time, and a brother by the name of Carl Miller were being arrested at the UW. Another one of my buddies was arrested on the other side of the school. And when I got down to juvie, there was a big commotion around the
Juvie
TV.
being
Juvenile hall.
Oh, okay, yeah. I got you.
When I got down to juvie, there was a big commotion around the TV. And so I went over to see what all the commotion was about. The king had just been assassinated. And it was just as if they knew to get us off the street before we could organize anything in the community. And so a week later, we were scheduled to attend the West Coast Conference of Black Student Unions at San Francisco State University. So we drove down in like 3 or 4 car caravans, and when we got down there that night, that Friday night, the keynote speaker was none other than Chairman Bobby. And he gave the most fiery speech.
A man came along at the bottom of a mountain, searching out a clear stream of water. He was thirsty. He was very, very, very thirsty. Now, when the man found the stream of water, the spring, it was muddy. It was filthy. Then the man explained to the other man, the black man trying to clear the stream, that stream is dirty because at the top of the stream, at the top of the hill, there's a hog in the stream. There's a hog muddying it all up. Black people want their freedom. Martin Luther King in his own way, Malcolm X in his own way, Marcus Garvey in his own way, Du Bois in his way, Nat Turner in his way, Lumumba in his way, Ho Chi Minh in his way, Castro in his way, all are dealing with trying to get the hog out of the stream of freedom for people in this world.
He was really pissed off because 2 days after MLK was assassinated, little Bobby was assassinated. And so there were about 400 students in that auditorium. And I remember him talking about, we're going to fight this revolution until our blood runs in the streets. And you could almost see the line, of the people that were scared to death, which was most of all of them. And the 2 or 3 of us, me and Aaron, and a few others, made a beeline to Chairman Bobby and said, we want to start a chapter of the Black Panther Party. That's really where it began. And told us to come to little Bobby's funeral the next day. And I remember seeing hundreds of young men and women in leather jackets and berets lined up in military formation. imagination and thinking that looked like a black army. You get inside the church, the walls are lined with brothers and sisters lined on the church, and down in front was little Bobby's coffin draped in the Panther flag. And we sat through, you know, the ceremony, and then afterwards, Mrs. Hutton wanted the coffin to be opened so that the community could see what the police had done to her son, because he had been shot about 20 times. And so when we filed by the coffin and looking in, you know, I tell this story often when I'm speaking, and it's an image that I'll never forget. Little Bobby laying there with his leather jacket, his beret, his free Huey button, his powder blue shirt, and I looked inside and realized that he was 17 and I was 17, and it was at that moment, that was the no turning back moment. Yeah. So, and that's where it all happened, bro.
Wow, that's powerful, man.
Yeah.
Very interesting, man. When you know, you're talking about 17 years of age, and you know, we're looking at our youth today.
Yeah.
You know, like, what do you think should happen? Just right now, where we are right now with our youth.
Well, you know, the commitment that we made. So often, and I just spoke to a high school auditorium full of high school students last Thursday, about 300-400 of them, and I told them this story and the commitment that we made to literally die for the people. We were ready to literally die. I never thought I would see my 21st birthday, if that. That's a commitment that, you know, the times back then, they called for that kind of commitment, because that was the stage that the civil rights movement had morphed into the Black Power movement and to this budding revolutionary movement. And the kids can't wrap their head around that. You know, they can't wrap their head around that level of commitment. And so I tell them that, you know, they have to find, you know, their own cause today, because there's plenty of them. You know, there's plenty of them. In fact, I asked the group, the whole student group, after I asked them, I said, so how many of you want to be able to breathe in 20 years, right? Yeah, well, so that got everybody's hand up, right? Well, if they don't get up and do something, they may not be able to breathe. Certainly if they have kids, their kids ain't going to be able to breathe. I mean, that's just one example of a movement.
When you speak of breathe, my brother,
I mean the environment.
Environment, okay, the environmental cause.
Yeah, they knew exactly what I was talking about.
Okay.
And so, one, and I tell them, you know, you have to find your cause. You know, find your whatever it is that you know that motivates you, because they have to connect to something that motivates them. I can't expect people to engage in, you know, a struggle, revolutionary movement, whatever it is, at the same level of commitment level that we had. You know, I can't put that burden on them. And so what I try to, for these young people, and I tell them, you know, go live your life, live it to its fullest, but don't be blind to stuff that's happening around you. You know, driving over here, I was listening to another one of those heartbreaking stories about these, excuse my French, the Netanyahu.
Oh yeah.
And his army that are committing genocide in front of our eyes.
Right in front of our eyes.
Right in front of our eyes. And lying about it. And there's so much commotion going on in this world. So young people have to find, you know, their footing. They have to find the cause that they can get behind, and decide for themselves what level of commitment they're going to make. But they're going to be forced to make a commitment at some point, you know, because it's staring them in the face. Yeah, the atrocities that are going on around the world and in this country are staring them in the face. You heard of Manny Ellis, the brother that was killed here in Tacoma? You know the 3 cops that got off? You know they got paid $500,000 each.
I heard about it.
You know.
What happened to Elijah?
People who knew and loved Elijah want him to be remembered as a tireless advocate for the community, someone who was working to address gun violence. At a vigil Sunday afternoon,
I want to thank Elijah's family for being here today.
Family and friends of Elijah L. Lewis came together to remember the young man known as a tireless advocate for his community.
Now you hear Elijah.
Everyone here wants Elijah to be remembered in a certain way. However, the young man they cared so deeply for has done some of that work for them.
People ask me why I'm in this work, and for me, it's not work.
Countless interviews give you insight into the person that was Elijah L. Lewis.
I've lost over 40 people, and a lot of them due to gun violence. I have to make sure that the next round of youth are getting the same type of guidance. A lot of things in my community happened that I was like, you know what, I need to be a part of the change.
Elijah L. Lewis was somebody who was at the heart lover of community.
Triana Holiday thought of Elijah like a little brother.
He was a young person who had vision.
We need more people to talk about how they can be a part of the solutions.
Details on why this shooting happened are sparse. Seattle police have not released a motive.
This cannot fall on deaf ears.
The cruel irony of Elijah's death was not lost on this crowd. A man working to end gun violence, another victim to the epidemic.
For him to die in this way, for his life to be taken through gun violence from someone that was random, in a sense, this is hurting so many of us.
We know a 35-year-old man is in custody, but we are waiting on Seattle police to confirm what exactly led up to this shooting that's hurt and impacted so many. In Capitol Hill, Cornelius Hawker, King 5 News.
It's like kill a nigga, get $500,000, get $500,000. You know, come on. That's the world in which we live.
Yeah. And they're beginning to realize that their time is up.
Yeah.
You know,
it is.
And this is the desperation of a survivor.
It is.
Of an Ice Age survivor.
Yep.
They realize his time is up now.
Yeah, it is. Time is up.
You know, and they're saying if I can't have it, ain't nobody gonna have it.
Right.
So I'll bring it all down.
That's right.
You know, and our young people sometimes in their life don't realize the emergency, but we was living in the middle of emergency. For instance, your dad, and I know your brother Aaron wrote the poem that your dad wrote.
Yeah.
You know, right after Emmett Till.
Yeah.
You know, I was 2 years old when Emmett Till was assassinated. And I remember what happened in my house. And I remember those times. I remember the smell. You know, when we watched our black and white TV, we was either watching the Civil Rights Movement or we were watching Vietnam. One of those two things. Those are immediate times. We lived during a time that was that was geometrically, expanding. And when you think of 17-year-olds thinking just in terms of, I'm willing to give my life. Like Dr. King used to say, if you haven't found something you're willing to give your life for, you have no right to live. That type of commitment that you're willing to put it all on the line for something larger than yourself.
We grew up in an era of assassinations.
Oh yeah,
one right after the other.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, '63 was the anniversary of several of those events. The 16th Baptist Church, the bombing.
Okay, the children.
The 4 little girls. Bloody Sunday. Medgar Evers. John F. Kennedy. I mean, it was just I was 13 that year. You were probably what about? And in '63, you were probably
63. I was turning 10.
Turning 10. You see, these were everyday things that we were seeing on the TV set.
Yeah, yeah. And TV at the time was a novelty.
It was a novelty.
In a sense, because we had black and white.
Yeah, we all had black and white. But it was the only, means of information outside of what you hear on the street, unless you were picking up a newspaper. I used to deliver papers when I was 12 years old, but I didn't read any of them. But I saw what was on the TV, and so it's very different than obviously this age that we live in today. But there's so much information out there, and there's so many ways that people are distracted. We live in and when you think about the this information age and what it has grown to. The oppressor knows how to use it as a tool, you know, to manipulate and to mislead, you know, and make sure that people are, you know, are not fully aware of what's going on. Now, if you're paying attention, you can read between the lines and see what's going on. Like we just talked about Netanyahu and his, you know, they've become the Nazis of the 21st century. If you look, you see it. It's right there. Yeah. But if you're watching, what is it, Beyonce, Queen Bey, or if you're watching, although I want to give her credit for putting on Panther uniform during the Super Bowl. Gotta give her credit for that.
Formation.
Right? Gotta give her credit for that. Gotta give her credit.
What they did to her when she did it.
That's right. But she overcame that anyway. Yeah. So, you know, there's so many distractions.
A lot of distractions. You see, that's my hashtag, no distractions.
Yeah.
Because you can lose yourself in the distractions.
Oh, absolutely.
There's ways that you can, you know, drown yourself in ways you can forget what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, there was no way for us to really.
There was no way.
We didn't have those types of escapist traps.
No.
You know, we had to face what was going on. And you know, for me, with all due respect for our young people, I have a great deal of respect for what that's why I do what I do with our young people. Yeah. You know, because, you know, like I retired from the Board of Ed in July of 2009. Mm-hmm. But retired to me, I spell retirement R.I.P. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're an educator, it's a lifelong thing. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm doing what I was born to do.
That's right. In
terms of educating the children and going in, and that's what I was doing here. You know, when Langston Hughes called me up and asked me to come in, and my thing is, as I've seen, is our young people are ready, man.
Thank you.
Our young people, in so many ways, are as ready now as we were back then.
I think they are.
And they are, I think, at advanced steps as it relates to what they're exposed to.
Well, you know, you look at 4 years ago when Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and Arbery were murdered, along with all the countless others. Mm-hmm. And the Black Lives Matter movement sprung back up. Mm-hmm. And of course, it obviously has its challenges, the Black Lives Matter movement. But the young people, and I don't know all of what happened in other states, but the young people here in this state, they got on it and changed got the laws changed in terms of deadly force, got it changed in the legislature, got the police departments defunded to the degree where they can't buy all these military weapons. So they did some serious organizing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think the DNA is ingrained in us. Mm-hmm. We just need to activate it.
Oh, it's there.
It's there.
That's what they're afraid of. See, they're afraid to death. That's why they tried to hide and destroy the legacy of the Black Panther Party. Mm-hmm. And it was in 2010. I was headed over to France to speak at a conference. I was going to keynote on the Black Panther Party, and the conference was actually part of it's called CIATAR, Society for Intercultural Education, Training and Research. So it's in the work that I do, because I've been a diversity consultant for the last 38 years. And so, but they asked me to be the keynote, so I talked about the Black Panther Party. Now they had people up in the booths with microphones on, and they were translating. I lit them up, and these two women approached me afterwards and asked me would I please come to the Netherlands to talk about the Black Panther Party, because she said school children in the Netherlands learned about the Black Panther Party. They're taught about the Black Panther Party in school in the Netherlands. And so on my way, the irony is that on my way to
You're welcome.
France that year, I was speaking at asked to speak at the Seattle Art Academy, and the woman that invited me there, she actually babysat Panther kids when she was 12 years old. A young white lady. She's a grown woman, obviously now. And when I got there were two students to meet me at the door to take me back to the classroom, because I'd never been down to this fancy place. And the two students, one was black, one one was white. And they asked me, so are you the Panther, the former Panther that's going to speak? I said, yeah, I am. And they said, well, what was the Black Panther Party? And the black student asked, he said, was that like the black KKK?
Wow.
You just said the depth of that.
Yeah.
But see, that's the deliberate misinterpretation, misleading, hiding the history of who we were, so that these young people don't grab a hold of it.
Yeah.
See, that's why we're building a museum and research center in Seattle.
How's that coming along?
We've already got.
With our house sauce.
We just got about a couple of $100,000 worth of funding. We've got another $700,000 grant we're applying for right now. We've got a temporary site that we should be occupying towards the end of this year, because they've been refurbishing this building. Oh, it's coming along very well.
Oh, that's good. Do you have a concept of when it will be open?
Any of us anything else?
I'm good.
I want to. Oh, you got? Okay. Oh no, I was going to ask for a dish. Everything's all right.
All right, perfect. Enjoy, y'all.
Thank you.
I'd say the permanent site is about 3 years away.
Okay.
But we're well on our way. Yeah.
I visited Oakland in 2015 when they were developing that museum to celebrate the 50th anniversary.
Oh yeah.
And you know, they got Huey's seat right there and everything.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's a bust of Huey now in one of the parks down there that they put in a couple of years, just 2 years ago. Frederica, his widow, had it commissioned, and she's working with the National Park Service to put some sort of a monument to the Panther Party in every major city where there was a Panther chapter.
That's amazing.
What was interesting in New York, you know, the story about the Young Lords.
Yeah, they were at the 50th in Oakland, and they came to the 50th here in Seattle. Yeah.
Okay. That relationship that occurred, because in the headquarters in the Bronx, they had a picture of Don Pedro Albizu Campos in one section and Malcolm X in the other.
Yeah, he, what's his name? Chacha?
Chacha Jimenez.
Chacha just put his book out this past year too.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, his memoir's out.
Yeah, I mean, he shared the cell with Fred Hampton.
Yeah.
Fred Hampton said, "Have you ever heard of Pedro Albizu Campos?" Chacha said, "No." He said, "You need to research that, brother. Get up off the street." It was interesting. He came when I taught college, New Paltz, upstate New York. Chacha Jimenez came to speak to the students.
Those greens need vinegar?
I'll take a little bit.
Yep, I got white and pepper.
I'm listening, bro.
It's just real.
Yeah.
Very real. And then we brought Bobby Seale up, the Black Student Union. Brought Bobby Seale up.
When was that?
This would have been, in fact, Haru was a young brother. I brought him up with me just to meet Bobby Seale. This would have been maybe 2018.
Okay.
No, couldn't have been 2018. It would have been like 2010.
Okay.
2010, 2009.
Okay.
I think it was 2010 though. And it was interesting how the students, were able to relate to him. Because we started having conferences, because when I went up there, we started talking about certain situations, and emphasis was put, and then they brought Chairman Bobby up, and he spoke about he had a degree in electrical engineering. He said he was a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, he was.
And he talked about that elder brother that used to teach about black history on the corner. And Bobby said he ain't never heard nothing like that before. And he said that should be in college.
Yep.
That should be taught in colleges. And then he reached out to Huey P. But it's really when you find something that you can be committed to. When it's something, like I tell people to find your divine gift. That everybody's born with a gift.
That's right.
And it's unique to you. Even if someone else does it, they don't have your flavor. So there's no reason to be competing with anybody.
That's right.
And as you help them, they rise, so do you. So the idea of competition. And I just remember the atmosphere in the meetings as a young person. I even remember the relationship between Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben.
Dr. who?
Dr. Ben, Yosef Ben Yaakov.
Oh, yeah.
It was cooperative. There was no competition. There was no argument. There were no debates. And their debates were just discussions to grow higher in terms of the knowledge and wisdom. And when young people can find something that they're willing to dedicate their lives to, magic can happen.
Magic happens.
And magic, as we know it, is sleight of hand. Magic, when you look at the African tradition of magic, it's will. You will something to happen.
But throughout our history, the Panther history, and throughout history, period, the oppressor's number one tool was divide and conquer. Number one tool. And of course, that was no exception. We were no exception. And it was when Hoover named us the number one threat to the internal security of the United States and ordered his field officers to destroy, disrupt, and discredit the activities of what he called Black 8 groups. They began to employ agent provocateurs. And they targeted 3 cities for elimination first. And we didn't know that there was such a list. And the 3 cities were LA, Chicago, and Seattle. And they went to LA first because in LA, which was the first chapter outside of central headquarters. We were the second chapter overall and the first chapter outside of the state of California. So in LA was run by Bunchy Carter.
Yeah.
Bunchy Carter and John Huggins. And so the agent that they employed was Maulama Ron Karinga, who had a black group called Us, or United Slaves. He used to wear dark shades and dashikis and so there was always a friction there. And so what they did was capitalize on the friction. And there was a pot of money that was that had come available, not by accident, to the black students at UCLA. And so Karinga was trying to get control of the money. And so Bunchy and John had gone to UCLA to powwow, right? But see, the FBI had already done their thing with Karinga, and they ended up shooting his agents, and other agents ended up shooting Bunchy and John in the back and murdering them at UCLA. And Karinga's payment for that, a lot of people don't know and realize, Karinga's payment for that was Kwanzaa. See, he's credited with creating Kwanzaa, but it was a CIA agent who created Kwanzaa, and he created Kwanzaa because he wanted black people to have a separate holiday during the Christmas holidays than white people. It was another way to divide blacks and whites. So Karinga, for his role in murdering Bunchy and John, was given the rights to claim Kwanzaa. And everybody said, oh, Karinga created Kwanzaa. It was a FBI conspiracy that Karinga got Kwanzaa's blood money. Kwanzaa's $1 billion industry, but it's blood money built on the blood of Bunchy Carter and John Huggins. See, now there's a deeper story to that, because people don't realize, wonder why we have all this gang violence. The Bloods and the Crips, began with them killing each other in L.A., et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But see, Bunchy had been the head of one of the largest gangs in Southern California, the Slawsons. If you do your research, you can find this out. And the Slawsons were 5,000 members strong. So J. Edgar Hoover was afraid to death that Bunchy was going to organize these 5,000 gang members into revolutionaries, which is why they killed him first. Because he was very articulate. He was like a Fred Hampton, very articulate. And so when they murdered him, the next comrade in line, they murdered him and John Huggins. The next comrade in line was a brother by the name of Elmer Geronimo Pratt.
Oh, yeah.
And Chicago.
Yeah.
And he was a good buddy of mine, G was. And out of nowhere, G gets a beef. And he's framed up for killing a white couple playing tennis on some tennis court someplace in L.A. He spends the next 25 years in prison. So they effectively eliminated the key leaders, one right after the other in L.A. And it was in 1980, there was a documentary that was produced on HBO. And they were interviewing, in this documentary, they were interviewing the head of the Crips, who was in prison. And he said that when the Panther leadership was wiped out, the young gangbangers splintered and formed their own little gangs because they didn't have that direction from Bunchy and G. And so he said one Saturday night in the rail yards that run through Watts, that a couple of trains came and just stopped. And they knew that the people that ran the rail yards knew that if they left anything in the trains, that they'd be gone the next morning. TV sets or furniture, whatever, they'd be gone. So usually the cars were empty when they finally got hip. Don't leave trains full of merchandise there. So they went in to check it out. The guy said, we went in to check it out anyway, see what was in the rail cars. They said they opened the doors. He said there was every kind of weapon you could imagine. Uzis, M16s, AK-47s. You see these images of these gang members back in the 80s shooting AK-47s in there. Where the fuck, excuse my French, where the fuck do you think they got that shit? He said in the next set of cars was all the ammunition that you needed for them. So they armed the gangs. This is in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. They armed the gangs, and then they flooded the community with drugs and crack cocaine. There was not a black chemist who derived crack cocaine. That was a white chemist who created crack and flooded it into the black community. And so they literally started the gang wars. And that same scenario was played out in major black cities across the U.S. Trains in the black, because the trains always run through the ghetto. Trains stuck overnight, filled with weapons, ammunition, while drugs are being flooded in. So it was a whole train of shit that happened as a result of Bunchy, starting with Bunchy and John being murdered in L.A. on that campus way back in 1969. We were at their funeral in L.A. Those were dark days. But people need to look deeper and see how black people have been manipulated. It was the same thing that the U.S. government did to the Native Americans. They manipulated them. This Trail of Tears. There was one of the chiefs of one of the nations way back in the 1800s sold his people out and agreed to move them from Florida all the way across the country into Oklahoma. But that was orchestrated by a rival chief, but because they divide and conquer. It's always what they do. And so young people today are going to be faced with that same thing. It's not going to go away.
When you study history, when you go back to Kemet or Egypt, and you see where things fell apart, Indo-Europeans are coming in, but they don't have the power to take it over.
Right.
But what they do is they exploit the fact that black folk are fighting amongst themselves. When you go to the Moors in 1492, Bo Abdil was fighting with his own father-in-law. took advantage of that. When you look at stories of whether it be Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King, whether it be the NAACP and the Black Panther Party, or the Black Panther Party as it relates to the National Urban League. We have to stop fighting amongst ourselves. The cornerstone is to stop fighting amongst ourselves, and that's the cornerstone, because they don't have the power or the intelligence to be able to overtake us, but they know if they just exploit what I call the Willie Lynch syndrome, because we know that he never existed, but we do know that there is a syndrome where we separate ourselves in so many different ways, superficial, language, hair texture, complexion, and in so doing, it allows other people to come in and further divide us and put wedges. That's right. See, they got themselves in place because they sometimes fight each other, Hatfields and McCoys, but when it's time to rally the troops,
they come together.
They come together, and they still hate each other.
That's the truth.
But they know how, but they hate us more.
They hate us more. That's right. That is exactly right.
That was the one thing about I used to always when I would talk to the street organizations and even in schools where I was in middle school, maybe high school, I told the story of Hiawatha and how he united the 5 tribes. French called them the Iroquois, but they call themselves the Haudenosaunee. And Hiawatha saw, like, this was like 1000 AD. He saw that they were fighting amongst themselves. The Cayuga, the Seneca, the Mohawk, the Onondaga, and the Oneida. And he said, we got to stop this. He was known as the Dreamer. And he brought representatives of the 5 nations onto the Onondaga territory. And he picked up a bush. And he explained to them, there's going to come a time when we're going to have to be united. And we up here fighting amongst ourselves. They're going to come in and be able to divide. And he took one arrow and he broke it. And then he took 5 arrows and he showed how difficult it was to break the 5 arrows when they're all together. And he said we have to stop the fighting amongst ourselves. And so he picked up a bush and he had all of the leaders, the people of the 5 nations that had lost the most, parents, children, the ones that were the angriest. And he said, if they can bury the hatchet, then all of us can too. So he purposely picked the ones that had the greatest beef with each other. Right. And that's where we get the term to bury the hatchet. Is that, we'll fight. Once we bury the hatchet, we ain't gonna fight with each other no more. And that's what, and years later, Conestoga, Native American, was brought to Philadelphia to explain to the so-called forefathers about how they made peace, because the 13 colonies were never independent. They always had a king. So now they're going to create this concept of 13 independent colonies, but sovereign. And that's what the Haudenosaunee were. They were able to develop a civilization where there were 5 nations, and in each nation, according to how many members you had in your nation, you had what's called a sachem. And that sachem got together and they appointed one of each of the nations to have a grand council. And that's where these phonies got the House of Representatives, was the sachems. And the 5-person, no matter how big or small your nation was, you had a representative on the grand council. That's where the Senate came from. And so even at that, going back to what you're saying about understanding how Kwanzaa came into existence, understanding how history comes into existence, we don't dig deeper. That's right. Behind the scenes to understand. That's right. And when they brought the idea of this so-called Constitution to these Native Americans, they gave it to them and said, "What do you think?" They said, "What are you talking about?" They said, "First of all, you got a whole group of people enslaved, and you have no respect for your woman. With those those two right there, you'll never survive. You'll always be faltering. And this is what we're experiencing today. It's faltering, and it's faltering through their own doing. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you see, Brother Elmer, even if that's true, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Do we have our own economic system in place? Do we have our own educational system in place?
Well,
do we have a labor system in place?
No.
That's what Neely Fuller talks about. You know, those areas, the umbrella areas where we have to have organizations.
And we have the minds.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and even the resources. It's just hard to imagine how people can get themselves, and I think that's the struggle, the challenge, is to get themselves beyond the divisions that have been created to create this new environment, this new day. You know, I was in Uganda about 10 years ago, and we were there on a project trying to bring green electricity and other things to Uganda through this organization that I'm part of. And so we were traveling across the country, all points, all four corners, and we were on the far east in the country, and we were on the equator. And there was a big yellow strip painted coming up out of the Lake Victoria, coming up across the street and into this restaurant, right down the middle, right into this restaurant that was called the Equator Restaurant. And so we went in there to get lunch, and we're sitting there, and I noticed these beautiful paintings on the wall of a society. And so the owner, he said, "You know what that is?" And we said, "No." He said, "Well, first of all," he said, "we were not Uganda. That was what the British, how they altered our name. We were Buganda." He said the national language of Uganda was Bugandese. While there's so many different tribes in the country, they united around that one language, Buganda, the Bugandese. And he said, what you see up there is the House of Commons, Parliament. That was theirs. They had that. And the British stole the concept of the House of Commons and Parliament from them. So these great civilizations, as you know, I know because you're a historian, existed. Where tribes and tribal differences were put aside, and people were able to come together. It was the Europeans that came in and destroyed that through their divide and conquer. But we had that, we had those great civilizations. But we were a threat to. Black people were seen as a threat because we were so intelligent, and so that's why they went to parse out all of Africa to the various countries to divide the whole continent, and of course you see the results of it today. They still can't pull themselves together because they're still fighting over the scraps that the Europeans left behind when they so-called liberated the countries. So it's a deep thing, bro.
Yeah, man. And you see, that's interesting too, because the dates that you're looking at in those so-called independence movement was the 60s at the same time.
Yes, it was.
So much was going on.
Yes, it was.
I mean, worldwide there were things going on.
Worldwide. Our three daughters are named after the oldest girl. Her name was Samora. Samora Monku. She's named after Samora Machel.
Yes.
Who was the head of Frelimo.
Yes.
And the next daughter, her name is Frelimo, after Frelimo, which was the Popular Front for the Liberation of Mozambique. And the third daughter, the youngest, she was born in 76, the year that Angola got its liberation. So her name is Angola. Angola Shimaringa.
Yeah.
Shimaringa means liberation.
Yeah.
As you know.
Wow.
But so all of that stuff was happening back then.
Yeah, it was an active, really a very powerful time. I remember when Martin Luther King and Adam Clayton Powell went over to Ghana for their independence,
Yep.
and that connection helped us understand.
Yeah.
And you know, Malcolm and all of his relationships.
Yeah.
This was a lively time that showed us. But you know what I feel is all things come in divine order.
Yeah,
and I believe everything comes at its time.
Yeah.
And but it's up to us to keep on keeping on.
Have to.
And to realize never to give up. Thinking,
No, never give up.
Never give up, because that's what they wish. They hope that the hopeful thinks it's hopeless.
Yeah.
And if they can do that, then they can succeed for the moment, because you cannot cancel the future. You can only postpone it.
I'll take one of those. Thanks.
It's a powerful time, brother. It's a powerful time.
It is a very powerful time.
I mean, you can feel it. You know, and so many, for someone like yourself who went through it,
Yeah.
you feel the current of what was going through the times back then.
Yeah.
And now you're looking now and seeing the current of what's going on now.
Yeah.
And it's just so, it is so real, so powerful. And it's just something that we have to just keep on doing what we're doing, brother.
Well, and see, that's the whole reason why these museums and research centers, we're calling them interpretive museums, because they're going to be interactive. We visited 11 black museums and interpretive centers around the country. We're going back, a group of us, Aaron and the leadership team is going back to 4 of those museums in June, again to get a look at how we want to prepare ours. And one of them is the DuSable in Chicago.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
And have you been to DuSable?
Yeah.
And when was the last time you were there?
Oh man, it's been a while, but I would say probably, it would have been delayed to like 2008, 2009.
It's changed dramatically.
I heard.
Dramatically. I didn't realize that the Chicago police had half of the building, the downstairs. They've since been kicked out, or they left, and now DuSable has the whole museum. And they have a very powerful Panther exhibit in there. But it's very interactive, which is what we want to achieve. Remember the old Harold Washington exhibit in the museum?
Yeah.
His desk was in there, and I think they had his office set up totally different now. Now his office is still there, but now they have a animatron. You know what an animatron is?
No, explain that, brother.
Well, it's a robot of Harold, and he's sitting at his desk. And when you approach the exhibit and you push the button, he starts talking. He starts talking to you.
Is it an image or is it a physical reality?
It's a physical reality.
Oh, wow,
That's
okay.
what an animatron is. It's actually a talking robot. And he's talking about the things that he accomplished, and then he says, well, let's take a look. And he turns around and he turns his TV set on behind him. And there's some of the projects that he was working on. So it's interactive so that people can interact with him and interact with the museum.
Wow.
There's another exhibit when you walk in after you go through kind of this hall of black heroes from Chicago. And after you pass that, there's a room to the left that is the March on Washington. So before you go in there, you put on one of those, what do you call those things, man, that you can interact with?
My son has one, VR, the virtual reality.
Virtual
Quest.
reality. Yeah.
Quest.
Oculus. Yeah, Oculus. You have to put one of the Oculuses on, and then when you go in, you're actually in the March on Washington. Like the people are around you, the king is giving a speech. Oh, wow. That's powerful.
Wow.
So cool.
Wow.
So it's given us a lot of ideas about, what we can do in ours.
One check, please.
To make sure that it's interactive, so that people particularly young people, but people of all ages can interact with what it was like being in the Black Panther Party.
Oh yeah, wow.
And so
that's what you're going to do on your level in terms of, like Huey Newton and
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you're going to have him up there like Harold?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Wow, Fred Hampton and wow.
It's going to be powerful.
Wow.
And there's another one of their exhibits that you walk into, and there's a what do you call that virtual person that pops up?
A hologram.
It's a hologram.
Yeah, yes.
Wow.
And you can ask her any question, and she'll answer it.
Cool.
Wow.
Africans came over around through Europe. They touched all of those points. You know, the white Europeans were in caves.
Yeah.
You know, the Moors taught Europeans how to bathe.
Right. Absolutely.
Really? I mean, because I don't know if you've ever heard of the Alhambra.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you guys been to it?
I've never been. I was going to go with Runoko Rashidi, but
you've got to see the Alhambra.
Yeah.
It's in Granada.
Yep.
And it was built in the 11th century. Mm-hmm. It had running water. It had toilets that flushed.
Yep.
Now you have to put that in perspective. The 11th century, toilets that flushed, showers that flowed, fountains that flowed, and scientists still can't figure out how they did it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of the advanced intelligence, obviously.
Yeah.
And so all of these touch points show when the diaspora really circled the globe and touched South America, North America, Europe, coming up out of Africa. And if they understood that connection,
yes,
you know.
There's a brother, Dr. David Imhotep, and he wrote a book, The First Americans Were Africans.
Yes.
And he talks about those 5 movements.
Yes. Yeah.
The first being the Twa Mbuti of Congo and the Khoisan of Southern Africa.
Yeah.
And then the Clovis Folsom, then the Algonquin, then the Inuit or the Eskimo.
That's right.
And then the Asian invasion. The great majority of indigenous people we see today, as they look phenotypically, they really are the last migration of human beings to this continent.
Yes.
And that when they came here with the other people. The first 3 were strictly African. Then the Algonquin, the Inuit, that's the Bering Strait one that everybody try to focus on.
Right.
But they say that some of the earliest people came on the Benguela Current of southern Africa and went right into the mouth of the Amazon. So, because they have found the bones of the ancient. Luzia is one of them. And she's found in Brazil.
Well, I'll give you when I get this guy's name.
Yeah.
And so I can make sure you've got his book. You can review it and see how it coincides with your information.
Yeah.
The guy's done his study. He's done his research.
It's documented.
Oh, it's all
in fact, it was documented. There are people in Britain that documented it.
It's all documented.
All around the world. We're the only ones. That's why I tend to want to sometimes watch BBC.
Yeah.
Because BBC looks at news in a different way.
Yeah.
Of course, it's their way, but it's different than the way we look at it. You know.
Absolutely.
What are solutions? I'd like to ask you solution for our community, which means the adults and people there, and then the children.
See, I don't have the ultimate solution of solutions. What I do try to speak about is a pathway, and the pathway is what you're doing yourself. You know, what you just talked about doing. That's the pathway. Is to educate these young people and inspire them to read. To get outside of this bubble that they're in. Every audience that I speak to, even I speak to kindergarten through 5th graders, and when I'm talking to them, I don't go in there and lecture to them. I have the teachers educate them first, so when I come in, they're asking me questions. And the first elementary school that I went to during our 50th anniversary was over in Bellevue, Washington. If you know Seattle, it's a predominantly white community over there.
It's whiter than Seattle, if you can imagine.
And so this is a white elementary school, Spirit Ridge Elementary. And so the teachers called me up and said, "You come and talk to my second grade class." I said, "Sure." And I I said, well, here's what you do. You have to teach them about the Black Panther Party first, and then, so I'm there answering their questions, not lecturing to them. And so when I got to the school, I started seeing these posters on the wall that said Panther Principles. And I said, what the fuck? And then I realized that their mascot was a panther. So I said, okay, don't get excited. Don't get excited. So I get into the classroom, and there's about 30 kids spread across the floor. And then another teacher pops her head in and says, can my kids come in? So she brings another 20 or so. It's about 50 or 60 kids, all sitting on the floor. Second graders. So I'm down in a little chair, so I'm eye level with them. And the first question out of this little white, blue-eyed, blonde kid's mouth, without any more energy that he could muster up in his little body, he said, what was it like being on the Police Alert Patrol? What? It's like blew me away. And so their minds are open.
Yeah.
See, you give them good information, and it's information different than the crap that they're feeding them in the school. They gobble it up because they know the difference. Mm-hmm. They know the difference. They know when they're getting genuine story. And these are second grade white kids. Mm. And I've been when I go to elementary schools, they usually have them all lined up. The kindergartners here, the first graders, second graders, third, that kind of thing. I was just at Stevens Elementary about 3 weeks ago in Seattle. And I was same thing. I was doing their questions and fielding their questions. And one little girl, she was asking, she said, she was trying to get it out of her mouth, but she didn't want to sound like she was saying the wrong thing. She said, were black people the only ones that suffered, is what she was trying to say. And I said, and so she started to cry in the middle of her asked a question. I said, honey, don't cry. I said, it's okay. I said, it's a good question. No, black people were not the only ones to suffer. So she got the question out. And so after when I finished, the kindergartners got up and bum rushed me at group hugs. I mean, I was like, I couldn't hug them all. Then the first graders came, and after it kind of settled down, the kids, because there's about 400 of them in there, and it settled down, the two little girls, the one little girl who was crying and her buddy was standing right behind me, and they came all full arm's length around my waist to give me a hug, because they know when they hear real information. They know it. You could see it in their faces and their eyes. And I tell these kids, I said, don't trust, I tell this to them in front of their teachers. Don't trust everything your teachers tell you. Read a book called Lies My Teachers Told Me. It's a place where they can begin. You've heard that. You've heard of that book.
Yes.
And once they get that, they're going to start looking, because they know that crap that they're feeding them in the public school system is not the real deal. Yes. And I'm inspired by the fact that I've already spoken to probably 5 elementary schools this year, and I've got another 3 or 4 to go before I'm done. That more kids, more teachers are exposing these young babies at an early age to truth. Yeah. So, solution? Give them truth, and they'll do the rest. Yeah. You give them truth, they'll do the rest.
There's no question, brother. Truth knows truth.
Truth knows truth.
And also, what they felt in you, because I began as an early childhood teacher. I was a kindergarten teacher. And the one thing is that they're so pure, they pick up energy.
They pick up energy.
And as you were talking to them, they not only picked up what you said, but they picked up the element of the truth. And Malcolm used to always say, I can disagree with you 95% of the time, but if you're sincere, I can work with you. Authenticity, to be authentic with them.
It's so amazing.
Yeah.
I was at a Bailey Gatzer, it's a black school last week, and when I walked, when I got there, and signed in, the teacher said, "Well, they're not quite ready for you. They're settling down. They're in the lunchroom." And as soon as I walked in the door, they turned around. She's teaching them about Seattle Black Panther Party. The kids said, "He's here, Elmer Dixon's here." and they're touching me and they're grabbing my hand. Let me touch you, you know, because we're relics, you know. But we're just in my 70s, and so we're like living history for them. But there was this one little boy. They had their questions written out, and there's one little boy. He was a fourth grader, and when he came up I had a mic for him to read his question. He was frozen. And as all the kids were looking at him and, "Go ahead, you can read it, you can do it." And I had my arm around him and I said, "You can do this, you can do this." And he was just looking at him. He was frozen. And so I turned him around so he's facing the wall. Didn't see him. And then he read his question. See, you're right. They feel the energy. These kids, and they know when there's truth. They know when somebody cares about them. It's a whole. It just opens their brains up. And so that's in Memphis, which is connected to the Lorraine Motel. Have you been there?
To Lorraine? No.
Civil Rights Museum.
Yeah, no, I haven't been.
So they have animatrons in there.
Oh, okay.
And they have a fabulous. We're going back there again because they also have a fabulous Panther exhibit in there. I was just blown away. But when you're one of the exhibits is they have an old Mississippi bus, city bus. It's in there. It's kind of like tilted a little bit. And when you get on the bus, there's an animatron there that says, "Get to the back."
Oh, that's so cool, though.
Wow.
So,
White museums don't even have cool stuff like that. Seriously.
No. Wow. It gives you the feeling of what Rosa and others, the people.
I'd be in there clowning, I'd be swinging at it like, I'd be in there acting stupid, like, oh, I want to go. I've always wanted to see the Lorraine Hotel.
The other thing about the Lorraine Hotel is that, so the museum is actually attached to it. So you actually go by King's bedroom, and his Bible sitting on his bed, just as his bedroom was, his hotel room, motel was the night before he was assassinated. And the room next to it, they had occupied both of those rooms. So you actually see them. You look into the bedrooms, and right after you come out of that part of the exhibit and you walk up the hallway, there was a big screen about that big as that mirror, and it was Huey talking.
Wow.
Yeah, they had a video. Yeah, they had a video. I thought, what the? Yeah, no, it's really. So it kind of pulls you into the exhibits, which is what we're going to do. We're going to pull people in so that they can feel it. Feel what it was like.
I want to end in the Swahili saying. It says, "Lasima tusinda bila shaka," which means we shall conquer without a doubt. Black power.